All right, hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Ali Show, and today we have another special guest, Aroha Montgomery. Did I get that right?
Aroha, same.
Okay. The last name, did I get that right? Is
Yep.
it Montgomery?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I tend to butcher people's last names, so it's always good to ask and try to get it right, if it's wrong. But yeah, Aroha, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Funny story for people who are listening. I actually came earlier and there was a client here that you were looking out for, and I heard some screams and shouts, and I was starting to wonder if you were beating him up in the room over there.
I wasn't beating him up. We just have banter while we're going.
I see.
Once everyone's done their hard work, then I'm pretty happy for people to just talk smack. It's basically that's what I do for a job.
Was it like a kind of like a hard massage kind of thing, or like a?
Nah, I think that's where people kind of get that side of physio wrong. Is just that it's basically Newton's law of every force has an equal and opposite reaction. As a therapist, you only really need to react on someone's body as much as their body reacts on you. So if people are in high tension states or they're in a lot of pain, you don't actually need to apply a lot of force to be meaningful. You have to know the intention behind what you're doing, I guess.
I see. Yeah. So for those who don't know who you are or what you do, could you just give us a bit of an intro?
So I'm Aroha. I grew up in Dunedin where I lived for probably 20-something years.
Wow.
And I studied nutrition and did my physiotherapy degree down there as well. And then I moved to Nelson where I physioed and lived for maybe 5 years. And then I moved up to Auckland maybe 5.5 years ago. And I work here as a senior physio in this clinic.
Oh, nice. What was the reason behind starting off with nutrition and then moving to physio? How did you get into that?
The original reason was, I don't know, I guess I was a bit forward planning, and I always intended to be an athlete, and I thought that I was going to be doing a sport that at that time wasn't carded under the Academy of Sport system. And I thought it would be easiest if I became a nutritionist and a physiotherapist myself. I have no idea. I don't think that's most people's thoughts.
Yeah.
And I knew if I didn't do nutrition first that I would never do physio. So I did my nutrition degree first, and then I did physio, and I intended to go back and study dietetics. But once you're out as a physio, it's really hard to find a year and a half out to go and finish dietetics. Yeah.
It's interesting. Well, in a way, you kind of make sense of what you said, the plan of doing that, because if you already know, if you studied nutrition and you do physio and you are in a sport, I mean, wouldn't you be better able to look after yourself or either not get hurt?
Correct. Well, no, everyone gets hurt. But
Yeah, true. I mean, accidents do happen. But better manage there's little niggles and pains and here and there and whatnot, or even food and making sure that you're fueling yourself right.
Absolutely. I think when you're looking at performance for athletes and even just health in general, if you look at most of the things that are beneficial towards what you do, it is really looking after your body. Your nutrition has a massive impact on how you feel, how your bodily processes, whether your body is kind of sitting in that parasympathetic chilled out state, or whether it's in that high inflammatory, if you have a lot of sugar and all of those types of things, or you're eating food that you're not tolerant to, those kinds of things can really affect your body.
You're mentioning about that. How much does food actually affect our moods and
That is a great question. You could probably ask the fire dietitian better than me. I think there is a couple of things about it. Food is obviously nourishment. You get nutrients from it, those types of things. But people forget that it's also comfort. Some people use food as a crux, obviously, and feel stressed. I had a client say it to me yesterday. They know they're gluten intolerant, have genuinely been tested, and then they got stressed at work and they ate a whole lot of sugar, and then they had a whole lot of other stuff, and now you know that their body's sitting in a different state. So it isn't just, it can affect your mood and vice versa, and then you can get yourself in cycles.
Personally for myself, I notice I'm quite a sweet tooth.
Same.
I gotta have my bit of sweets here and there, chocolates or whatever, every day. If I don't, I just feel tired.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just feel I don't know. Maybe it's the sugar, or maybe it's just the mind games, or maybe I just programmed it in my head. Like if I don't have sweet stuff, I feel like I feel a little bit.
It's a great reasoning process.
Yeah, I just feel tired, and I was like, I don't want to do anything. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. And I had a bad habit where I used to drink coffee with like 3 or 4 sugars.
That's a lot of sugar.
Yeah, that's a lot of sugar, I know. And after a while, I kind of realized that, it's actually not too good. And so I went down all the way to 1, and then I thought, why not? Let's try something else. And then those Avalanche coffees, 99% sugar free, and I was like, 1%.
Oh, the ones from the supermarket?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was not too bad. And like, everybody gives like supermarket coffee shit, like the instant coffee shit.
True.
A lot of people give that coffee shit. So I tried that one, and I was like, well, it actually really tastes good, and I don't need to add any more sugar on top of it. So
I've never liked coffee with sugar. I like the fact that it's bitter.
oh, the black coffee. Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
Talking about that black coffee, the only time I actually had, like I forced myself to drink that black coffee was when I did a job in India, and we were stuck in the middle of nowhere, and I had diarrhea. Like, yeah, I'm not kidding. So like I tried, at all costs, I tried to avoid, just not eating. I just watched like what I eat, where I eat, and like even the water. It was so weird. The guys at the hotel and all that. So the hotel that we stayed at was like the only foreigner expat hotel in that whole city. And so the guy working who gave us like the water, he was saying, "Oh, you might want to boil the bottled water." And I was like, "Why do I need to boil the bottled water?"
Because you didn't know yet.
Yeah, and I was like, so I was like, nah, you don't need to do that. It's all good. Start drinking the water, and obviously you got food poisoning or whatever. It just didn't feel right, and I had to drink that black coffee because it was so we couldn't find a pharmacy or doctor anyway. Like I think only after like a few weeks we were there, we started walking like to the nearest village and whatever, and we found like this really dodgy pharmacy, and just on the side, and it's basically like a dairy, and you could just go in there and you can buy whatever you want. You just just tell the guy whatever you want, and just tell him what you want, and he just gives it to you. And I was like, oh, wow, I don't need a prescription, I don't need anything. I was like, oh, awesome. And one of our colleagues, the boys from the UK, he actually bought. He was an old fella, but he took this opportunity to buy a whole lot of Viagra and a whole lot of Valium. So I didn't want to ask what he was going to use it for, but anyway, we keep that for another story. So that's interesting. Black coffee. It was hard to drink, but it did help initially when I had food poisoning.
I think lots of the boys drink black coffee.
Yeah.
They hardly ever have those like flat whites and stuff. I guess that's part of. I think Geordie has a special coffee that he gives the boys.
Oh, really?
I can't remember what it's called.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I usually just drink the cappuccino. That's it. Like no fancy ones or whatever. But would you say cappuccinos are fancy? Nah, I think it's
kind
normal.
of.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
if you have to go to a cafe and get it made.
Oh, just buy the $4 pack at the supermarket. There's 10.
Right, again.
So,
Don't know those exist.
Yeah. How has it been? Like, how many years? So have you been a physio?
I think I'm trying to think. Must be 10 plus years.
Wow, that's quite a while. So, how do you say your experience has been in this 10 years doing?
Well, I guess I started out, obviously, like I said, intending to be a nutritionist and a physio for myself. And I must have been in my second year, and I was playing rugby at the time for varsity, and I hurt my shoulder, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it, and it was holding me back doing sprints and stuff. And I got an MRI, and then we didn't really know what was going on with it for maybe like 8 years. Like, it didn't matter who figured it out until the point that I was looking at surgery, and then I was going to have maybe 8 months off as a physio, and I didn't want to do that.
That's a long time.
So during that time, I was like, oh, clearly I'm not going to be an athlete anymore. Like that held me back too much. And so I was like, well, what can I do? Well, I can become a physio at a high level. And so once I'd finished and I was in Nelson, obviously being in a smaller city, you get better opportunities to work with like rugby swimmers. We had like the Nelson Giants and stuff at our clinic. And so I just doubled down on that stuff, and within maybe like a year and a half or something, I was physioing for New Zealand Touch and lots of rep teams. And so doing that, you're working in the clinic 40 plus hours, and then you're doing rugby season, you're doing Saturday games, and then maybe during summer and stuff, you're doing touch tournaments and you're going on tour, so you're working like 60, 80 plus hour weeks.
Wow.
So yeah, maybe you only have 10 years experience or whatever, but you also did twice as many hours as everyone else. You kind of end up with like 15 years
Yeah,
experience.
it kind of works out.
And sports is great. It makes you have to think on your feet. You know, you run out in the field and you have to make a decision ASAP, whereas in the clinic you're trying to take time to work through the questions and make sure that you get the right diagnosis to start with, and then can set your treatment plan after that. So it gives you a really good understanding of the human body, but more so the person behind it. Like, what are the things that contributed to this person being in this state? Because not everyone has an injury that's external force. You know, they weren't necessarily in a tackle or in a contact situation. They could have just been walking down the road and got knee pain. Like, how does that happen if you didn't have an external force? So it teaches you a lot.
Definitely. What would you say is the hardest part about this job, about what you do?
It's draining. It's draining if you care. Yeah, so it's not uncommon to have like the carer fatigue, and they talk about it a lot in terms of if you're in a plane, you need to put your own oxygen mask on first. And especially after the lockdowns, it was really hard coming back and seeing how much it affected people's lives. You know, like some people had they separated from their partner during that time and had to stay in that situation, or the adult kids came back from the UK and stuff. And so you're absorbing a lot of this, like people's energy and their stories, and still trying to help them with the injury that they're working through. And lots of people had like bad injuries. They came fractured things coming off their bikes and stuff because more people were out in the bike lanes and stuff. So I think the hard part is if you care and you want to see people getting better, and they are either in their own way or the system, you know, like while you're waiting for MRIs and other things or surgery, those things, if they're not getting better and they're getting frustrated, it weighs on you.
Yeah, that's quite a hard one. Do you have like have you had experience with a lot of stubborn people who don't want to follow the
It's almost at the point now where you can't see me unless you're referred to me anyway. I'm too busy. Like, I'm not going to take on someone that's not ready to step in. You don't have to be all the way there, because like lots of people have had bad experiences. I think more than half my client base come from someone who's already been to physio. So I'm like I couldn't be helped, so you try. So I'm used to it taking a little bit longer and those kind of things. I'm probably the stubborn one. My patients are pretty good. Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. What would you say is like the most rewarding part of the job?
Helping people work past their limiting beliefs.
Wow, that was deep.
Yeah.
That was deep. I like that.
You're welcome. No, I think a lot of people come to me and as part of your process of talking through things, you ask them what their goals are. And someone will be like, I just want to walk upstairs pain-free. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, I know you want to run, or I know you want to, go wakeboarding or whatever in the summer. I'm like, please tell me what you love doing. Please tell me what you stopped doing. Like, what don't you do because of your injury? And some people need confidence. They need like a couple of sessions or time to be like, hey, do you reckon I could get back to netball? Or do you think I could get back to snowboard? Is that possible? Because they might have had someone tell them like, oh, just never run again. And that's just another practitioner's inability to work through a problem. They don't know better, so they're just going to tell you not to do it.
I see. The other one is, it might not be a popular opinion, but sometimes I think like, so let's say my personal experience now. I don't want to say somebody else.
Okay.
But so I recently fractured my foot, and I was out
Welcome to the club.
and so I was out for a few months, and like when I went back, obviously I didn't really follow a lot of advice that was given, like they get you to stay on the moon boot or whatever, this, that, whatnot. And I felt that it was taking too long and I wanted to start doing something first. And then when I went to the physio, I felt that some of the stuff that they were giving me was like too light, or I don't know, like would you say, I mean, it depends on individuals, like different people kind of, want to go a bit more or less, or I don't know, but would you say sometimes it's like, it's hard to gauge, or like?
It's not hard to gauge. This is where my like savage inner physio comes out. I don't mean to tread on anyone's toes. Most people are one way or the other. It's really hard to get them confident towards doing stuff, and they'll have too many rest days. They'll have a day where something hurts and then they just don't train again. 9 times out of 10, rest is not the answer. You're just 2 days weaker, Or people are too gung-ho and they get frustrated and they don't follow. It's like any training program or anything you do, it's like a gradual process. You have to understand the person that's in front of you. Like if they ask you the questions and they get you as a person, then they should know that you want to get out training stuff. And if I tell all my patients, I'm like, these are boring. I'm like, please, for the love of God, do your exercises so that we can get on to the stuff that you want to do. Because I don't want to teach you the same thing for 4 sessions. It'll do my head in. Yeah, and also you're talking, I'm like the worst patient. Like when I fractured my tibia last year, I played rugby when I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I was trying to focus on MMA, and I fractured it playing rugby, and I knew I'd done it. I knew it was bad, and I had my initial x-ray, and I was like, cool, that it's not fractured on that. But in my head, I know that it's not fractured because it must be fractured somewhere that you can't see until you're on an MRI.
Yeah.
So I just keep training, and I turn up on, like, I played on Saturday, a 10s tournament. I fractured it last play of the last game and did a whole lot of other things in my ankle.
Oh, boy.
And then I turned up to training on Monday, and I think we were doing something like wrestling or something, and you had to sprawl, and my ankle wouldn't go back because it, like, the way that I fractured it, I also had I shattered part of the bottom of it. So it was all in pieces.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces was in the way. And I
crap.
said to Eugene, like, I can't sprawl.
Yeah.
It's sore. And he goes, oh, don't tell me you're like so-and-so. And I was like, don't compare me to them. So I said nothing. I said nothing until I had my MRI. So for two months, I trained multiple times a day with a fractured tibia until I had the MRI, and the surgeon rings me up and he's like, you need to get on moon boot and crutches for 6 weeks. It's bad.
Oh, shit.
And I turn up the next day, and Eugene's like, why? Why are you on crutches? He's like, cuz it's not broken. I'm like, yeah, it is. And he goes, show me the report. He goes, I saw you training yesterday. I'm like, yeah, because I'm not going to complain.
Yeah.
So
no excuses.
Yeah, I'm not the person as, like, myself as a person. I'm not the best person to talk about the doing too much
Definitely,
thing.
yeah. I think I'll fall in the same category as that as well.
Yeah.
You kind of want to, I don't like to set these limits, It's hard. It's hard for me. Oh, talking about MMA. Yeah. So by the time this video comes out, it'll be 2 weeks before. But anyway, last week, Sunday, UFC 253. What was your thoughts on that event?
I think it's massive for the boys and for the gym to have 4 people on the same card. It's crazy, and great to see Shane back. Like, I think the physio part of my brain, when you see what they actually go through, and they never talk about what they're going through. They're just like, I had an injury or whatever. Most people couldn't come back from what Shane came back from. So massive kudos to him for getting back in there, and he'll come back stronger for it.
Definitely.
And then,
I was a bit sad, like when the first fight was Shane out of the 4 boys, or Shane's fight, and after his fight, I was like, oh man, I was a bit sad. I was like, man, because I've been seeing him training and like getting back on it, and I haven't seen as much as yourself, but I was so excited for him. I was like rooting for him. And then, when it ended that way, I was like, oh, it kind of got me down a little bit.
I think it's strange. Like that again, almost falls into the, maybe Kiwi mentality or All Blacks. You get so used to everyone winning and smashing it that when you start, like, everyone's going 4P. When you start with that, then everyone's like, oh, and then they're like, I wonder how the rest of them will go now that that's happened. But
It
I
kind
mean,
of
they
plays
show
in your
their
head naturally.
yeah, it shows their class, and like never had any doubt. Like Brad mentally is so strong, and he knows his own skills. And
He's a machine, man.
He puts the work in. So like their confidence comes from the training that they've done and where they're sitting within themselves. So yeah, I mean Brad absolutely killed it, and like he said, he said himself he's the best striker in the lightweight division.
Yeah, definitely. I think he'll give a lot of people a lot of trouble.
Massive trouble.
Yeah, and I really loved how Brad's fight went. You know, the first round, I felt maybe it could have, I would say would have gone to the other guy, but yeah, in that second and third round, he just came out and you could see.
Yeah,
like, he just dominated.
He said after that, like he made a calculated decision, like to keep to not gas himself out.
Yeah,
and wait and back himself in those final 2 rounds, and that's time in the cage and him making, decisions for himself in that moment of what he's going to do, which again is
he's
how
got a lot of experience as well, which
massive amounts.
And the funny one was, I think on the commentary they were saying like Brett has only had like I don't know how many. Was it 3 UFC fights? Or that's his third fight.
Yeah.
But at the back of my mind, I was like, this guy has had so many fights.
So much stand-up.
Do you guys even know what you're talking about? He's got so much, so many hours of experience in the ring, in the ring or the cage or whatever. And when they were saying, because the other guy, I think he had like 20 over fights or something like that, 19 finishes. So I might be wrong, but yeah, somewhere around there. And I was like, ooh, yeah. Okay, let's wait for the second round. Let's wait for the third round. Let's see what's going to happen. Kai's fight, what do you think of that one?
That was moment where they looked like they were both about to knock each other, I was like, what is happening? And they deserve that. I think it's fight of the month now.
Yeah,
it was fight of the night.
Fight of the night and fight of the month.
Yeah.
That was a crazy fight.
The volume and
first
flyweight
round,
division is hectic.
That was like, just boom, boom, boom. I was like, yo. And then he dropped the guy, and the guy did a spinning back elbow, dropped him, and then he dropped the guy again. I was like, yo, that's too much action for one round. I was like, yo, calm down, man.
Yeah, you're on the edge of your seat.
Yeah, it was going so fast. And then I think, personally, I felt like that guy sort of realized that he can't go strike for strike with Kai. And then he started to pull a bit more the grappling out.
Yeah.
And yeah, just that last, I was waiting for the throwdown, right? He picked him up, I was gonna throw him down, and then he was like quite a tall, lanky guy as well. So he just like squeezed his hands in, zoom. I was like, oh shit. Oh no. Yeah. But that was a good fight. And
it's a great fight.
Obviously the main one, Izzy put on a bloody masterclass.
Who's clinical?
That was amazing. And funny story, I was watching with a mate of mine, right? And so I invited him over to watch the fight. I didn't know who this guy supported. So he obviously doesn't watch as much anime and stuff like that. So then I just randomly asked before the fight. I was like, oh, who do you got? Who do you got, and what do you reckon the win's gonna be? And he said like, I reckon Costa's gonna win. And I looked at him, and first one was the first funny one he said Costa's gonna win by points. And then I looked at him and I said, like, if he's gonna win, there's no way in hell he's gonna win in points, right? But he's not gonna win. I'm gonna tell you that now.
Yeah.
And then he changed his mind and said, he might get the knockout. I was like, bro, I'm going to give you one last chance now to change your mind, right? To change your decision, bro, your prediction of the fight. And he's, no, I got it. I said, but I'll tell you what. I said, Costa's going to get knocked out in the first of the fourth round. That was my prediction. And then fight started, bell went off, and like first 10 seconds, I asked him again, I turned around, I was like, sure you don't want to change your mind? And then it was so funny. So the end of the first round, I was just smiling and looking at him, and I was like, yo, you sure you don't want to change it? That was hilarious. And when he got knocked out, I just went off. Hey you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video.
Yeah, I think maybe it's the part of me that's really fascinated with how the human body moves and people who are masters of movement. Like I watch dancers and a whole lot of things. That's part of how I even ended up back doing anything related to martial arts. But
did you do dancing?
No.
Oh, okay.
Look, I wish I was a contemporary dancer, but that was not the gift I was given. So I'm not following that path. It doesn't matter how long I tried to do that. I'm not made for that. So when I watch people like move, I'm so fascinated when Izzy fights and stuff at his feints and people and how they react, and you can see it building, like the picture building, and you're looking at, well, for me, I'm like looking at which ways they have to exit and stuff now. And when Costa started overreacting to the feints, and I was like,
Yeah, I was
and I
like,
started getting
"Ooh."
excited, and I was like starting to like yell and be like, oh, you don't know what's coming. And then he framed on that front hand to like figure out where that head kick was going. And I was like, oh, it's about to, like, you don't even know. It's ending like
it's coming soon.
now.
It's coming soon. And the funny one was the day before the fights, I did the podcast with Lolo Hemuli. And word for word, whatever Lolo said, Izzy actually did it. And I was telling Lolo as well. I was like, oh, Lolo, I don't know. I don't think I should, post any of this anytime soon. I was like, I'll post it after the fight, and he said, maybe put it after the fight. But that was hilarious because when I went back, I looked at it again and I was like, everything that he said actually did happen. And that's exactly what Izzy did. I mean, in a lot of ways, Eugene obviously has trained with Lolo before from the beginning. And in a lot of ways, they actually think alike. And I've had a lot of people who actually come and tell me that as well.
Yeah, they're masterminds. Like, we're so fortunate in New Zealand that we have so many amazing coaches, and that almost because of that camaraderie, even if people are at different gyms, that they can come together and form teams. Like, even if you look at the CKB team, like the amount of coaches and stuff that come in and have input, like no one's putting their ego before anything. There's just no such thing. It's just like teamwork. It's great.
It's so amazing how they've managed to have a system where you have input from so many coaches, and you try to paint a big picture, and not because you see a lot of people like as what you said, they have their egos, and it's always hard, some coaches might not appreciate what another guy saying. I mean, obviously there's room for discussion, but it's amazing. And the number of coaches that are working together
is a massive team.
Yeah, and that was like, when I first got to know about it, I was like, that's a huge team, and everyone has like their particular specialty, and they bring it. You can bring, anybody can bring a whole lot of people to come to the table, but it takes something really special, and you got to be on a different level to kind of put it all together. And like obviously that is another reason why they're the best MMA gym in the world.
Yeah.
The ability to actually do that, it's really impressive. Talking about when you were saying watching the fights and being very vocal, I feel like personally I'm very into. I kind of feel like I'm there watching the things. So I'm like at my place, I'm like shouting, I'm like standing, I'm like jumping, and the fight's over, and I'm like running around the sofa and like laughing with my friend. And I was like, oh man, I'm really vocal, like emotional person. It's weird, but sometimes people get annoyed. I'm too noisy or too loud.
I don't normally make any noise. I'm just like,
I'm very loud.
I do
very
get
noisy.
excited at the end of that.
So I think it was a really good event. I think unfortunately it didn't get all the wins that we wanted, but it's still, I think it's a big step.
I think your stock goes up though. Like even the Dan Hooker Poirier fight and stuff, Kai's stock will go up because, again, fight of the night, like how many more people watch you and are interested in your journey, and then how much more does that drive you to come back and improve? And that's the win or learn thing. Like I can't speak for them. I'm not trying to, but the amount that they learn from that will be massive. And those things have to come as part of the journey sometimes.
Talking about journeys, so your particular journey in combat sports, how did it come about, and like what was the first kind of martial art that you went into?
So I would have been about 7, and at the time my sister was doing judo, and she was 10 years older than me, so I idolised what she was doing. And a couple of my friends started doing karate, and so I just wanted to be like them, and so I joined in, and somehow I just was the one that never stopped. So I would have been 7 when I started. Yeah.
Wow, that's a pretty young age to get into, and you kind of went in without, like, on your own, without like anyone really Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And I was quite surprised as well. There was a photo that came out the other day, and you had your black belt on, and
Doug was like, "Who did you get that off? Who'd you borrow that off?"
I know,
And I was like, "That's my one."
I saw that comment and of Doug's
I love
comment, and
Doug.
whose black belt did you take? I was like, did you borrow one of
He's a
Carl's
savage.
belts?
Look, got to run it straight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So how long did it take you to get to that black belt?
8 or 9 years. 9.
8 or 9 years. Wow. Was it hard?
I guess it's the same thing. You don't realize, like, now I think about some stuff we did with Savage. Like, I was very lucky. I studied a style called Goju-Ryu, and we have amazing senseis and links back to Okinawa. So we learned from some of the Okinawan masters. And so we had the very OG traditional version, but also sport karate and point karate was like coming in, and they were going to try and get it into the Olympics. So I had literally I conditioned my shins from when I was like young. Like I don't nearly have feeling in my legs,
Wow.
which is not helpful because I don't check them sometimes. But I remember like rolling with like the wooden sticks and like smacking them, and we would just kick shin to shin. And like karate, like is literally empty hand. You don't have gloves or anything.
Yeah.
So we used to
Or
condition
even
our
the
hands.
grading competitions and all that? There's no...
Yeah, like you do push-ups on your knuckles and you punch this makiwara, which is like a wooden thing. Because you can't, if you punch the makiwara and your hand is bent, you'll hurt yourself.
Yeah, so it's got to be full knuckle. Right?
Yeah, so those things, I think I dislocated my thumb in my black belt grading, and I remember I couldn't really like close my fist, but you just, same thing as last year, I just shut my mouth and keep going. Because you can either do it, you either are making an excuse for why you can't do it, or you just push through it, whatever.
And just deal with it later.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. We wouldn't want to advise everybody to...
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, that... I
a
think
great
that's
one.
yeah, that's a really good phrase. You tell a lot of people.
I do tell people
Yeah,
that.
definitely. Yeah, talking about that, and then pretty much when you moved to Auckland, was that when you started to revive that whole combat sports thing, or even?
Yeah, so I guess the background to that is that from about 14, I took it very seriously, and I used to train. My coach wanted me to be a world champion, so I assembled a team. So I had the Academy of Sports, like New Zealand, Olympic level, physio, nutritionist, all of that stuff. And I remember being made to, this feels so like Cobra Kai, Karate Kid. I got made to read like sports science books and Sun Tzu's Art of War and all of these things to prepare your mind. And so I think between like 14 and 17, I competed, I'm going to say close to every weekend.
Wow.
And I would compete at that stage I was like under 14, so you compete in the under 14, 15, and then you compete in cadets, and then I'd compete in open women's. And then by the time you're getting to by the time I was like maybe 17, you're starting to place and like do really well at like a national level and stuff in those things. And then I must have been 17. And my main training partner, Reiko, she was 24 at the time, and she was always killer. She always beat me all the time, but she was so fun. Like, we had the best time. She was in an accident, and she passed away with her mum at the same time. In an accident. And so I think I competed maybe 3 weeks later, and then I just stopped. That was it. I was like, I can do this with her, and if I love it, but if I'm not having fun, I'm out. And so I literally did nothing. I stopped all martial arts until I came back and I walked through CKB stores, which was 2 years ago.
Wow. Wow, that was a long break from...
Massive break, like 14 years without it. And I never thought it would come back. I never thought I would ever do martial arts again.
During that period, you, correct me if I'm wrong, you wanted to get into bodybuilding as well, is that correct?
Yeah, I guess
I don't know if bodybuilding is the right word.
Same.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not fussy on the word.
Yeah.
So when I was in Nelson, I was obviously physioing, and I was like, I don't have a purpose for what I'm doing for training. So like, I saw this girl, Andrea Brazier, and she was world fitness model in the WBFF. And I was like, she's got big legs like me, and she looks amazing. And I was like, I'm just going to do that thing, because unlike bodybuilding, the WBFF, you didn't have to be balanced. I was like, I'm just going to do that. And so I wasn't training very much, and my partner at the time was a strength and conditioning coach. He's like, you need to train. And I'm like, yes, you're not wrong. So I started going down that pathway. And when I moved to Auckland, then obviously you're exposed to a lot more people are into that field here. So I got a coach who was like part of the, I think she got named best team in the world.
Oh,
and
wow.
she approached me, and I was
Nice.
like, same thing, you kind of forget. And I started working with her, and because in WBFF it's so much physique orientated, and you're at massive risk of getting an eating disorder or disordered eating. They encourage you to do performance-related goals. So I started working with Mark Holyoke, who's a gymnastics coach, amazing gymnastics coach. And I make the most random goal. I was like, I want to do an iron cross in 5 years. He's like, I've never seen a female do it. I'm like, I'll do it. Sorry, I haven't been back. I'm not even close to that. And then I started working with Suns. To work on some
he's an amazing guy.
Amazing. Such a great human.
Yeah. And how is like your experience with him so far?
I think we've been working together 3 years now. So at that time, just before I moved, oh God, I sound so injured. Just before I left Nelson, I tore my medial and lateral meniscus and got a bad chondral injury under my patella. And I couldn't even do a bodyweight squat. Like, stairs were sore, and it would be really sore for a long time. So for 3 years, I couldn't squat at all. And I must have started working with Suns maybe like 2 months before I had that knee surgery. And then I had no intention of continuing to train. Like, I was just training to learn stuff for physio, to become a better physio. And then I think we just started doing some rehab stuff after I had my knee, and I was like, I really want to get it good. And I was like, do you know what? Along the lines of making goals, I was like, if I could kick a bag, I think I'd feel like confident about my leg. And I guess the rest is history.
I like you see a few features of here there of Suns and how he trains his guys, and and he trains like a range of athletes as well. And then I see him training the boys like at CKB and all that, and that was what got me interested in him and what he does. And I like how he has a sort of a different way of thinking than a normal coach. And one of the things that he was saying was you got to have like a connection with the person that you're training. Man, I feel that that's so true. Like,
massive.
You can't just like train someone if you don't get to know them on a personal level. It's like it's a bit hard, I think.
Yeah, I think you don't want to use the word vibe loosely, but it is. It's like if you don't match with your vibe and someone comes in and it's okay to have down days, right? It's okay to be like, look, I'm feeling a little bit low, and the people around you lift you up. But if it's always that way around, if someone's always taking and someone's always giving, like, it's just not fair. And so I guess because he's around, and this is my understanding of it, because he's around most of his athletes most of the time, you want to be able to get along with them. Otherwise, like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's going to be hard. We wouldn't want to go, like, it comes back to the thing, like, you wouldn't want to go to a job every day that you feel like you're dragging yourself.
Exactly. You've got to be, and I think that's a massive part of what he encourages, is that you are passionate about what you do, because then it'll never run out. But if you're forcing yourself, and he'll call you on it, like he called me on it. Yeah. He was like, I think what happened. So I was training for the I'm so all over the place. Yeah. It's like Google Maps was just rerouting my life the whole time. I was like, wait, she was supposed to go off that exit. She's not doing that anymore. Whatever.
Yeah.
So I think randomly in there, I just started playing rugby again. Same thing. Haven't played in 10 years, whatever it was. And was loving it. Was playing halfback and still trying to do this WBF. I don't know how he tolerated me during this time. Like, it hurts me to hear what I was like doing. And I remember because I was training on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it was mostly sometimes it was the football boys, and mostly it was just AB and Izzy. And then Kai started coming, and Kai was like, what do you do? You're a power lifter, you're a bodybuilder, what do you? And I was like, I don't know, I just play rugby and am here, I don't know. And so I was playing rugby and I was having the time of my life, and he just looked at me one day and was like, I think you're more performance driven. And he's like, I know you could do this WBFF thing, you could probably be really good at it, but I don't think that's you. and he's like, I think you should focus on becoming world class at something. And I was like, does he know who he's talking? I'm so unco. Like, you have zero right to be talking to me, telling me that. Well, no, he does have the right, but to have someone turn around and say, like, I think you should redirect. And then I was like, and because I was playing rugby at the time, I was like, it must be rugby. Rugby must be the thing that I'm meant to be doing. And then Kai was doing some stuff with the bands one day, punching, and I was like, can I do that? And he was like, are you going to be a fighter? And I was like, no. And he's like, no, you don't get to do that then. I was like, FOMO.
Yeah, I'll give it a try. Why not, right? Why not? Oh, man.
Yeah.
And was that how, from there, was that how you started to get to training, like boxing, kickboxing and all that?
I actually started doing jiu-jitsu first. So I was still playing rugby, and at that time, I didn't know I'd been nominated for like the Auckland trials. And classic me, they'd all been training for like 2 months. I rock up on the last day, and then I'm in the development squad. I wouldn't have made the top squad anyway, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And so I was still training for rugby at the time, and then I was playing halfback and even wing. And I just started doing jiu-jitsu on like Tuesdays and Thursdays, or the days that I didn't have rugby. Yeah.
And pretty much got hooked.
Yeah, and I think it must have been after a jiu-jitsu class, like Eugene had this secret little MMA group that wasn't on the schedule.
Yeah.
And it was beginners MMA. And I must have gone like
Now
three
that,
times.
Now that you've said it on the podcast, people are going to start asking
I
questions.
don't think it exists anymore.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So it was like this thing, and then I asked him about my stance or something, and it went some way round of like, you know, if you keep going, you know, maybe the UFC one day. I'm like, what is all of these people telling me? Why is this? And then Doug will tell you I went to a kickboxing class, and I honestly must have hurt his eyes. He was like, oi, come here. And he's like, you're just so retarded, I need to help you. And I was like, yeah, that's why Doug questions the black belt thing.
What?
Kicking's very different.
Yeah, he's honest.
Run it straight.
Yeah, he's very brutally honest, but that is good, you know.
Yeah.
You don't want to have someone blowing smoke up your ass, and then you go somewhere else and you.
It's not a yes man team.
Yeah, definitely. I think that kind of puts things
If
into
you have thin skin, don't step in those doors and expect to survive. You won't. They're very supportive and lovely, but they're also going to call you on absolutely everything.
But I think you need to be around people who are like brutally honest, you know.
Do you want to know and improve, or you just want to keep being able to do what you're doing? And it's a massive risk though. Like if you do a combat sport and people don't call you on your mistakes, that's your livelihood. That's your health points.
You're gonna get hurt. You know, somebody's gonna get hurt real bad. So it's always good to be to have someone who really calls you out on this stuff. All right. On the topic of like finance goals and all that, which I found was quite interesting. Watching some of your content, and you're posting something about being a homeowner at a young age and stuff like that. Could you talk a little bit about that? Like, why did you kind of wanted to go towards that direction, like owning property and all that?
This is my inner nerd, so run it back a little bit. I was horrible at reading as a kid. Yeah. And everything I'm horrible at, I try to make that the thing that I'm great at. So I started reading books in the library, and I started at the bottom level of all the children's books. And by the time I was like 12, I was reading finance books and making business plans and doing all these things. And so I remember reading like Rich Dad, Poor Dad finance books from about 12, and from about 15. It's really weird looking back.
Wow.
And I have
at
it
that
on,
age,
I have it on my story. Like I wrote goals in the sorted.co.nz things, and I wanted to own three houses by the time I was 30. That was the goal.
Wow.
And I think I and it starts tiny. Like I think I saved like $3 a week from when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
I don't even know how much pocket money I got, maybe $5. So I saved, $3 of the $5.
What was the like the weekly pocket money you used to get at that time?
Yeah, I think it was something like that. Like we used to do my dad's filing and stuff, and he would give you money for it.
Yeah.
And so I wrote down that I wanted to own 3 houses by the time I was 30. And it's so funny looking back. I've achieved nearly all of those goals that I wrote down when I was 15. But I wrote them down with a timestamp, and I didn't even find that piece of paper at all, like, after I'd owned them.
Oh.
And so I would have been living at Nelson at the time, and I was thinking of moving out with my partner at the time, and he was studying. And I was like, looking at how much rent cost, and I was like, there's no way we're paying, 20 plus grand rent over the next year. You may as well buy a house. And then my brain, I don't struggle with big things, I struggle with small things. So in my head, I'm like, it's normal to just decide to buy a house. And I'm like, cool, we'll just go look at properties. And he was busy, so I just...
did it on your own.
And I came up with like 3, and I was like, okay, well, this is what we can afford. And we went to the bank, and the bank was like, no, you guys can't afford that much. And so I got a mortgage broker. And the mortgage broker was, you can afford this much. And I was like, great. And I was having an MRI on my shoulder at the time. And the radiologist was like, you should push yourself to the maximum that you can afford. That's my best advice to you. I was like, that sounds like horrific advice. I definitely don't agree with it. And then that's what I did.
Can you repeat, what was the advice again?
Push yourself to the maximum that you can afford. So we were looking at this house that was like maybe a couple of $100,000 under. Okay. And I was looking at that, and then I was looking at this other house, and there was the house I really wanted, and then there was the house that was the best business decision. And so we went through and we made a pros and cons list of the 2 houses. And the one that made the best business sense was the one that was a mortgagee sale. So the dude had gone bankrupt. The bank was selling the house, and mortgagee sales are on average sell for 20% under their rateable value. And so in conjunction with talking to the mortgage broker and then figuring that out, the risk you run with a mortgagee sale, though, is that you don't have vacant possession. Those people that are bankrupt might still live in the house when you get there. And 2, you don't own the chattels, so they can rip out all the carpet, curtains, sink, like everything, and demo the house. They can burn down the house, and you just paid all that money for a piece of land.
Wow. That's rough.
Yeah, so I looked up on the internet, and I looked up the perspective of the people who had gone bankrupt. And they said, look, if someone had given me cash money, I would have left the house alone. So we went and made a meeting with the dude. We said, we'll give you 10 grand, leave the house alone. Just leave it.
Yep, don't damage the place.
Yeah, so maybe we didn't have to do that. And we moved into this massive 5-bedroom home in like Tasman Hills. It was new. And it was like it's exactly what they tell you, buy the worst house on the best street. And it like, I don't know, it must be like nearly triple that amount now. Yeah, and that was the base. So like it was really ballsy. Like no one bid on at auction. And so I don't think most people are buying their first house at like 24. That's a mortgagee sale off of about a month research.
Yeah, that's really interesting how you've kind of figured out and came up with that plan to do that. Usually people wouldn't think that far. And there's just the one about like, meeting the guy and trying to make a deal with him so he doesn't smash the place. I think that's a really smart thing to do. Like you can't leave, this stuff out of chance.
Yeah, exactly.
You gotta try to do as much as you can to try to salvage the place. But yeah, so at 24, first place, and then you went on to buy another one, from what I understand.
Yeah,
a couple years later.
So when we were looking at moving, and he was playing rugby, and he was going to move to a different region for rugby, and I, savage, was like, I'm not moving there. So I moved to Auckland, and my nana just passed away, so I wanted to be closer to my family here, and my sister lives here in Auckland. So from that, it's the same thing. I never have a plan B, ever. There's no plan B in my brain. It was like plan A, I get this job, he gets this job, we buy this house. Literally, I think the Monday I got this job I have here now, he got his job on the Tuesday, we signed on the house on the Wednesday, and we moved on the Friday.
Wow.
Like all of those had to, like in my head I hadn't assessed that if any of those hadn't gone, but I just don't, there's no other outcome. If you prepare, that's what's going to happen. And so I hadn't even looked at that house when we bought it. I hadn't even been to the town. I was like, looked at it online, looked at where it was.
I see some photos.
You're in a different city, right? So I picked a location that was close to a park, to a pool, that was about 3 or 4 bedrooms, which for that town was like about right, because if resale value is probably a family.
Yeah.
You want it to be close to bus routes, be close to town. And then we just used the equity from the first house for that.
Wow, you've actually given a lot of good advice for people to start
Is
making.
it good advice?
But if you would advise someone, would you advise someone to get into like buying, owning properties earlier, or what is your?
It depends what your goal is. I didn't want to own property for some parts of my life because I just wanted to be free to be able to move and rent and do those things. And then it kind of became this like balance point of like, now it doesn't make sense. So now I'm in that position now. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense to pay rent in Auckland anymore. And I have dogs from my ex that I want up here. And being a dog owner here in Auckland's awful for being able to find property. So I'm like, well, the only option is I've got to buy a house. And now I'm like, right, we're in a pandemic and it's a bit of a recession. But it's the same thing. If you're going to put those limiting beliefs in your way, then you're not going to do it. But if I turn around and go, hang on, and Dave Ramsey is like one of the people I listen to about that stuff, is if I make a goal of I need to save for a deposit by next June, say, whatever the 8-month goal I made, then you've got to work back from that. So you've got to decrease your expenses and you've got to increase your income. So you've got to work more.
Hey you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Saying, giving yourself a time frame to save money for the deposit plus maybe a little bit more, whatever. Yeah, it's like, how hard do you push yourself to really save as much as you can? Or
it's just that thing, you're committing to the goal or you're not. You're either, that's what I want, and I guess it comes down to that why. Like, I want my dogs in my life. That's strong enough for me to push. I've already worked 80-hour weeks. 80-hour weeks didn't destroy me.
You have very lucky dogs. You know?
There'll be one day that I'm standing in a ring and I'm like, I just want to go see my dogs and they can have a bigger backyard. That's what we're fighting for, just a backyard space. Yeah. They'll just sleep inside anyway, whatever. But it's fun. It's funny the things that drive you, and whatever that is, that's fine. But yeah, I think you've just got to set the goal and then keep working towards that. But you have to surround yourself with better information than what you currently know. So those properties that I had were in a different place, and I ended up buying in that other town because when I came here, like, Auckland was in its peak, and I think we looked at a place in Greyland and it was like maybe $1 million, and then they were like, what's it selling for? What are you asking? And they're like 1.8 million, and I was like, that's not happening. And my family grew up in my dad grew up on the shore and my mum grew up in Greyland, Ponsonby, so I didn't know anywhere else. I didn't know the other suburbs that I could have bought, but now I know Auckland better. You can kind of pick what you want. But I think, going to a mortgage broker, having a look at auditing your own financial processes and like making a plan until you sit in front. And my best guy mate here said the same. He didn't know until he sat with a mortgage broker that it was possible for him to get into a house. People almost like, you're sold the idea that you can't do it.
Yeah, or maybe people worry about, when you see a mortgage broker, for example, he might push certain ideas in your head. Some people are afraid of, but at the end of the day, I think you shouldn't be afraid of information. Because that's what it is.
If you don't like that one, go find another one. Whatever.
You always have the choice, but that's the other thing. Like, what you said is absolutely true. Obviously, living in an expensive city, with high rents, it's better for you to be paying off and owning the property instead of if you know
at
that
the moment a mortgage for the bracket I would be looking at is cheaper than the rent I would pay for a place by myself. Yeah,
it's crazy. And it's so funny, we're going through a pandemic and all that, but all the property agents are still pushing the prices up. And it was funny, during the whole lockdown and all that, there was a law that was passed that you can't, put the rent prices up. And it was, I don't know if they realized that it just basically what it did, just gave everyone a timeline, like, okay, right after this, we're going to push that even higher. So what was funny, like in my particular situation, when my contract ended was during that lockdown period, so they couldn't raise the prices. So they said, okay, we just re-sign for the rent for another 12, for another 12 months or whatever. And then 2 months before that date where they actually they're like, okay, yep. So just to let you know, in 2 months' time, we're gonna put the rent prices up, and it was like quite a big jump. It
Right.
was a bigger jump compared to the last 2 years combined.
Yeah.
So they usually only go up like maybe minimum 10, 20 bucks a week kind of thing. But this time they actually just doubled that. And I was like, yo, I don't know how that has helped us in any way. And first thing, like, I mean, they don't realistically, like, they don't care.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the truth is, like property agents and companies, they don't care.
Yeah, I guess it depends. It's the same thing. It depends on the property agent and the owners of the property.
If it's a private owner, maybe.
Yeah.
I think private owners, they usually have, you would build a relationship, you have a better connection, you can talk things out and explain your situation, stuff like that. I've had a friend who lives in a place in town, in Hamilton, not here, and I think for the past 5 or 6 years, his rent has not gone up just because of the relationship that he has with the owner. And I was like, man, you're so lucky. Like, no property agent is going to give you that kind of deal.
Yeah.
And that was another thing why it kind of keeps him there and not wanting to move out to a different place or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's I guess when owning from the point of view of having owned properties, I chose not to rent them. There came a point, I think we must have bought the house in maybe May, and then it came December, and I wasn't doing sports at that time, so I wasn't like meeting my half. I mean, you don't get paid very much as a physio in a smaller town, and I wasn't meeting my half of the mortgage or my half of the bills by like $3, and that irritated me. So I was like, look, we live in a super nice area. We've got a super nice house. We're gonna rent it out for the summer. And so we rented out on one of those holiday houses things for like,
cool.
I don't know, $600 a night or something, times a couple of weeks. But we didn't even have the furniture for the house. So I had to go and hire all the furniture and buy all this bedding so that we had enough. And then by the time we'd finished renting the house for the summer, we just stayed with like friends and family. Then we had enough money to be able to actually like furnish the house and live off that. But I also think it's like leveraging what you already have. And that's the same thing when you're looking at like your financial situation and stuff. Like leverage the skills that you have to earn yourself more money. Like maybe you have your 9-to-5 job, but what side hustle thing can you do? Yeah, you can always, it's up to you what you're going to do with that.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people who have, I've met a lot of people who have a lot of skills, a lot of talents, but they just don't want to push themselves to do that little bit of extra work, outside of the work that they're already doing.
Yeah, they're comfortable with that.
Yeah. I think
I'm not comfortable with that.
I feel like it's quite dangerous for myself. Like when I get comfortable, I start to get irritated. I was like, this just feels too comfortable. It's it's going too smoothly. It's like it's in some ways it's stupid, but like I don't know if it's stupid, but for me it's like I prefer a little bit of chaos here and there, and have a bit of like trying to be more productive.
Yeah.
With what I can do and with the free time that I have, and also explains one of the other reasons why I'm doing this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're doing it. That's the most important thing. There's so many people in their head, like I should start a podcast. Like even my nephews when they do the dishes, like we should start a podcast. I'm like, one, you're not that funny, and two, like you're not. Start it then, or don't talk about it. Either.
Yeah, I think like there's always that struggles. Maybe I don't have the right gear, or I don't have, I don't know what to say, what to do. But I guess you just have to start somewhere, and then it kind of builds,
Yeah, there's the process of you either learn and then do, which is what a lot of people do. I think they accumulate so much information and then like ruminate on that for so long that they don't actually get anywhere. Or you can just do and then learn. Like
where do you stand in this?
Do and then learn now. I'm like, I'm going to screw up a million times, but I can reroute off, your mistakes. And it's weird because you can beat yourself up. Like I think about it now and I'm like, I sold both those houses and then I got, like I had money, and I am not very wise with money once it's like free. I'm like, oh, those dogs need
Suddenly have
saving. I'm
too much
I'm
money.
like, save all the dogs. And then I don't think my friend who's in finance is like, what? You have to learn that
Is
stuff
that what
better.
that link is? That
Yeah.
link on your Instagram page.
Yeah, so my Instagram link is always like, please donate to the little dogs in China. I'm like, that's yeah.
Yo, but that's a really good cause, you know. Like you have, I think it's as important. Like you have people who look out for people, other people, but you know you've got to have people who look out for animals as well, and like other
can be both.
yeah, or whatever, you know. Like you need this stuff. Like some people argue like, why don't you think about the people first? But there's people doing that, but there's
It cracks me up when people do that. I'm like, I'm literally a physiotherapist. I'm like, I dedicated like 7 years of my life at uni to learn how to help people, and I do that all the time. It's not either or. You can, if you care and you have the energy for it, you can help whatever causes. And everyone has different causes that have meaning, but it's the same thing. If it's going to have meaning to you, then you better have actions that support that you have meaning, not just an idea.
Tell us a little bit about what your mates are doing over there. Maybe you could share some light on that.
What they're doing over there?
Yeah.
So Slaughterhouse Survivors is actually they take dogs and stuff that die in the dog meat trade. And I know a lot of people say culturally, like, yes, like, well, how does that different to a pig and stuff? But the problem in Asia in particular is that the dogs suffer, is that they take people's pets and then they are tortured before they die. It's not like farming. It's very different. And in my head, I was like, oh no. I remember like learning about this and being like, my life's ruined now. This is it. Like, I already know I have to help, because you can either find out those facts and it hits you and you do something about it, or you can switch off the part of your brain that knows that exists and continue on with your life. And I happen to have one of those brains that I can't. And then I was like, as long as I'm in a physio room working one-on-one with people, this is great, but I'm missing part of my purpose of why I'm here, which I guess is part of also my drive of like why I'm following the path I am in my life, is because I know to do what I want to do, I have to have a bigger impact. And a bigger impact means, a bigger platform, and it also means more money.
Definitely. Talking about like, that dog cruelty in Asia. I personally experienced like when I spent some time living in Bali, and you'd see some guys who riding on their bikes and they have like a huge hook. There's the guy sitting in the back has a huge hook on the bike, and when I first saw that, I was like, that's so weird. I was like, what the heck is this guy doing with a like a huge hook riding around everywhere? And I asked my mate, a Balinese guy, and I said, hey, Frog, like, what the heck is he riding with the, with the hook? And then he said, oh, bro, they're going to catch the dogs, man. I was like, what? What do you mean they're going to catch the dogs? I said, yeah, bro. They'll go around and they'll just, like, hook up the stray dogs or whatever. And he said, oh, sometimes it's not even stray dogs. Like, it might be just people's dogs that just happen to not be on a leash, and they're walking around and they'll take it, bro. So that was why, like, he had a dog at that time, and like he'd always keep his dog like in the house, or just not roaming around freely. And I was like, yo, that's crazy, to have that kind of thing. And one of the ones that I watched, there was a video that was put out the other time. It was really painful to watch, but this guy was actually cook. I don't know if I should say it on. For people who don't want to hear it, maybe you close your ears for a few seconds.
Yeah, but then I'm like, you don't have a problem with the fact that it's like what your eyes are seeing is the fact that it's happening like that. That's your consciousness telling you that you don't want another life to suffer. So then I'm like, again, I think people should be like gradually exposed to that in a way.
Yeah, but so this guy was just cooking the dog, and the dog you could see the dog was still alive.
Yeah, they boil them alive. Yeah.
And it's boiling the dog, and he's like, putting all that hot water on the dog. I was like, and you could hear, like, you could literally hear the pain from the dog. Like, you just watching it, you can feel it, and it's like, man, how does this guy do this and not have any compassion at all? It's like, it's sick, but it does happen. The people like this who exist, unfortunately.
I think that's the point behind like them and Animal Hope and Rescue, is that you have to understand that's a survival for those people. You can't just be like, oh, I don't like that person because they did this thing and that's horrible. I'm like, well, what about that person probably has a family and they're trying to make income, you know? And so I think Animal Hope and Rescue, what they do is like they shut down before it got made illegal in China, which I really don't think it's illegal. I think they're still doing it. Is they would go to a slaughterhouse, shut it down, but they'd work with the people who own the slaughterhouse to give them new skills so that they could open like a vegetarian restaurant or something.
else,
For those people have to have a
They have to
living
earn, yeah.
You have to give people tools to be able to live differently and shift things over time. Like, yeah, I think that's where the compassion for people and animals like comes in. You can help both, but it comes from, I think putting yourself in their shoes a little bit as well.
Yeah, you know how like people always see this sort of stuff online, like you don't really get the experience. And one of the shocking ones was when I was working in China and I went there, you know, a relatively rural part of China, and I got to see it for myself. And like, you know, you'd see like it's like a thing at the night market, you know, and they just have anything and everything.
Yeah.
And I had to have a Chinese friend of mine who, you know, translate, because they have like all this stuff there, and
You're
I'm
like, what is it?
yo, bro, that's a lot of stuff on the table, man. How many kinds of meat they have, bro? Or so, oh, there's this, and there's frog, and then there's this, and then there's that, and I was like, yo, that's a lot of stuff, and I was like, you know, it's just not for me. But he, well, I don't know, he's got a tongue for it, so he's trying different stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I to each their own, you know. I don't want to say anything, but and then what I think one of the ones that we went to a restaurant, and while sitting at the restaurant, like coming into the restaurant, I really like it. It smelled you know, a little bit different. You know, I wasn't used to it. And then we ordered some food, waited for food, and the first one that came was the chicken.
Right.
So this one was like what really shocked me was like a big plate of chicken, and as they were carrying it to our table, I could see something right in the middle of it. I was like, yo, is that the head of the fucking chicken? And yeah, it came on the table. They put it right in the middle of the table, and the head of the damn chicken's there. And it was like looking at me, you know. It was like pointing towards me. I was like, yo, bro. I was like, I can't eat this, man. I was like, nah, bro. I eat the veg and whatever. But it was even hard to sit there and eat while there's damn bloody chicken heads, you know, looking at me. I was like, yo, you know, I eat chicken, but you know, the way that it was kind of presented, I was like, yo, how do you do it? You know, it's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. Oh, talking about chicken and all that. I understand you're a plant-based.
Yeah.
So
very disappointing to my dad.
Oh, why? Why is that? Why would
Grew up on a farm. Dad still tries. He just got no idea. He doesn't. He'll be like,
when did you make that switch?
I probably had been at uni. You know, like it's a lot easier to eat plant-based at uni when you're living off like no money. So I didn't really eat meat at uni, and then when I was with in a previous relationship, obviously we ate meat, or like I would cook dinner and eat and have meat in it, and then I'd sort of eat it from time to time. And then when I came up here and I lived by myself again, I was like, wait, I don't want to do that. And so I would have been vegetarian again for maybe 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I took about 6 months to transition to vegan, and that took a while. But I'm allergic to dairy products. Like, it really wasn't that hard, and I don't like eggs. But there is still a big process. There's a big difference between being meat-free and then being able to do plant-based well. Because, again, it's the same thing. People are like, oh, I hate tofu. I'm like, mate, I don't like it either. Like, whatever. Yeah, it's like how you cook and prepare things.
Yeah, okay, there's the topic of like, you know, when you're studying, it's obviously easier because of, you know, how much it costs and all that. But would you say now, and like, you know, having a lot more people going into this whole plant-based options, I kind of see certain stuff like at the price of like some of this stuff, it's quite expensive.
I guess it depends. Like, I think if you get like side-fed chicken, maybe it's like $12 for 300 grams, but per 100 grams, like, it's got way more protein and stuff than chicken, so you don't need as much of it. And then you just flesh out your meal with like more of like beans or whatever else you're cooking, so you don't actually use that much of necessarily the thing that's there. But then, like, it balances out. Yeah, the same thing. If you pick up every single like old plant-based alternative for everything that's the most expensive, it's not going to be that. But if you have beans and stuff, like on other days it doesn't.
Do you eat those artificial meat stuff? Are you into
I can't eat things that are like beef patty things now. I tried and it was gross to me.
Yeah,
I don't like not so much of that stuff.
Yeah, I was watching. I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, and he actually broke down a little bit on those artificial meat stuff and how that's actually like way worse for you than eating the meat itself.
I'm not gonna agree with that. If you've seen what's in sausage rolls, mate, I'm like, there's no way that pig's lips and assholes is worse than that pea protein. Like, I'm not subscribing to that at all. But you do you. If you really want chicken nuggets with cartilage and bone, go for gold. But I'll have the plant-based version. It's fine.
Yeah. So this would be wise words from the wise lady.
I think probably a big part of shifting here to Auckland was just a shift in mindset and the people that you surround yourself with. And I hadn't read lots for a few years. So, I mean, we have 70,000 thoughts a day, and roughly 90% of them are the same as yesterday. So if you're around the same people or you're reading the same thing, you're not going to progress your life. So I make a conscious effort in the morning to listen to like 15 minutes. I mean, I listen to Jim Rohn on an audiobook is what I do in the morning. And then at nighttime, I listen to something else. And I try and find time to always like keep reading. When you read or Audible, whatever version you take different information, and it can be YouTube videos, I write them down in a journal, and then I think about, it's the same way I work through like a clinical reasoning process of what is this person's injury and stuff. If I read something that's confronting to me, I'll be like, what in there is valid? What's true? What can I learn from this thing? And then integrate it into my life. So I read a book over lockdown called The Courage to Be Disliked. It's so abrasive. Like, it talks about how basically, say there's a relationship in your life that you don't deal with that person anymore. They probably did something and you're like, the reason I don't talk to them is this thing. And that book, the way that it frames things, which is like Alderian psychology, I think, says that you have a goal to not have a relationship with that person. Therefore, you now go back and you find evidence for why you don't want that person in your life. And I was like, what? There's no way that that's true.
Yeah.
And I looked at the relationships I've cut off in my life, and I didn't want a relationship with that person. It's true. And then I just put that event as the reason why. It's the same reason if someone's injured and then they want to get back to sport and they're like, oh, well, I would. Like with my shoulder, I'm like, I would have done rugby, but my shoulder, I've been through heaps of injuries now and I still do stuff. Like, it's because I want to do what I'm doing, and I don't let that stuff get in the way. So I think it's really important to, if you're stuck in some point in your life, and it can be different things, like some people are great athletes and horrible with finances, or great with finances and terrible with your health, all of those things. If you want to change something, then go look at the people that are experts in that area and listen to them, and listen to people who have differing opinions. Like, I have friends who are meat eaters. I have friends who are Christian, not Christian. I have friends of different races. Like, you can't be around the same people, otherwise you're going to end up with everyone's got the same opinion as you. It's good to have, like, how even before I was like, well, mate, I'm not eating whatever you eat. And that's totally fine. Like, we can do that. It's just, I think, open your mind up to some of your closed-mindedness.
Talking about, I actually forgot to ask earlier, talking about like your stuff of the mind, understand you actually shared a video the other day, which was really good. I felt, talking about your journey with depression, for example, and mental health and all that. How you actually went through depression yourself. Could you share a little bit about that and how you...
Well, since I posted that video, I found out that the depression part is actually secondary to having autism. So I, over the lockdown period, did a subjective assessment with my family and with a psychologist, and I have mild to moderate autism. And so my depression is secondary to that, because autism is like a neurological disorder. It's not a mental health thing. And it makes things like executive function, reading people, it's almost like a social blindness kind of thing. I mean, lots of people think about autistic boys and being troublemaker or nonverbal, but someone like me who's female and diagnosed later in life is pretty much bang on. bang on how someone who's female might be diagnosed. So my depression was a lot about trying to read people correctly and then feeling bad when I'd been offensive or something and I don't know that I've hurt someone. And so I probably would have had depression since I was 7 or 8, 9, like really young. And in a way it becomes your own normal. But
Hey
again,
you, don't forget to subscribe, like and share this video.
I think it's tough because you don't know any different. Like I don't know what it's like to feel good every day. That's not my normal. But the problem is for me is that if I have all these coping mechanisms, they get draining. And so when I think because I have it myself and then I see other people, then I see the way that they make like life decisions a bit differently. And so I think that was the point I was trying to get across in my video, which felt super uncomfortable talking about it, was just that some decisions that people make were really quick to be like, oh, they don't show up to training, or, you know, they're lazy, they don't have work ethic. I'm like, that person's probably depressed. Like, they're probably going through a really low time. Like, if you want to be a good friend, now's the time to like go and see how they're going. And when you're in those spaces, even if my friend showed up at my house, I'd be like, oh my God, thank God you're here, I'm depressed. Like, that's not how it goes. I'm probably not even going to tell anyone about how I feel. So it starts with like you maintaining enough connection with people that when they're low, like I think that's why I have so many guy friends, is because they don't talk to each other necessarily about it. And then I'm the only one who knows that they struggle. And then when I get them in a group, I'm like, you know, you struggle and you struggle and you struggle. And they're like, what? They just don't know.
Yeah.
And so I think it's great to say to people to like reach out and talk, but you actually have to live that in your life. You have to have meaningful connections that when you say, hey, how's it going? You mean, how are you? Like, I've noticed this about you. Like you cancelled last Friday, or you seem to have a lot on. Like, are you managing all good? Is there something I can do to help?
Yeah, I think that's the that's the other thing. Like between guys, it's harder to have that conversation.
I'm female and I'm also horrific at it. So it is both. I think it's just in general, like when you're in those low mood states, it is really hard to reach out. Like I'm shocking. I only ever used to tell my mum and my sister, and that's it. No one else would have any idea. You just carry on.
Did you try to get some professional help during that time? And like,
I didn't get help until maybe last year. Yeah.
wow. So you kind of just dealt with it on your own.
Yeah, I think because I knew inherently that you don't want your life to be over. That's not the feeling, but you don't know how to cope anymore. You don't know how to live. And so you're trying to find ways to work through it, and you're doing it the best you can. And some coping mechanisms aren't great. Like when I was at uni, I drank too much. Great. That's not how to get yourself out of that. And then you can become a workaholic. You can become obsessed with things. And then you try and trade for better habits. So by the time I got like help about how to do certain things, I already had a lot of those by myself. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that was quite loud. But yeah, like personally, I've experienced a situation like that, and like it was at that time, it was just like so hard. I just it's hard to even explain to someone like what you're going through in your head and what's happening, and sometimes I felt at that time like man, if I'm gonna keep telling someone about my problems, they're probably gonna get pissed with me, and like, man, this fella has always got his problems, it's always about him, I get that kind of ideas in my head, like this person's probably gonna think I'm an idiot, or like they're gonna get sick of me and they're probably gonna distance themselves away from me, so I'm not gonna talk about my problem. I'm just gonna.
I definitely think it's part of it. Like feeling like you're a burden to people, feeling like you're a downer is a part of the reason that people don't reach out. Like I had so many people message me after that and saying that they have those moments and things. And I think maybe from being a physio, like we have to ask questions like, what's your medical history, and people are, you know, like a lot of people are on antidepressants, or, you know, because of the injury they get a secondary depression. So I'm a bit more aware of how many people struggle with mental health things and how many people outwardly look okay, that I don't think that just because someone looks okay that they are.
Yeah, that's usually the people who look the happiest might be the ones who really
Massively, because
struggling.
they know what it feels like. I mean, I never want someone to come into my day and they leave feeling worse because they interacted with me. I'm a little bit rude sometimes when people first meet me, so like maybe that does happen sometimes. That's never my intention. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the other thing was like people have, well, previously people had the idea that, you know, if you actually spoke out or see, you know, go to see someone about it, like people look at you differently. I think the image, the kind of image people didn't want to get, you know, put across as someone who, you know, I felt like, for me, I felt like I was worried that people look at me a different way.
The crazy thing is that I think there's do you know who Tim Ferriss is, wrote 4 Hour Work Week, has his own podcast?
Oh yes, I've heard of that.
He
one.
did a TED Talk, and he changed his whole TED Talk up and just talked about the day that he didn't commit suicide. And he was in this room full of like all of some of the most successful people in the world, and he couldn't read the room because no one, you know, it's not like humorous, people didn't laugh. And then he said the next day he's never had so many people come up to him and say, thank you for talking about that thing, you know, like my son's struggling with that, or I had that. And I think that's part of the other part, is like, if you felt like that, some of that is the reason that it drives you. Like, I nearly can't not exercise and train and do things that are good for me because it'll send me too far down a spiral. So the same thing that you're going to curse, like if you're going to look at it negatively, is the same thing that helps drive you. I wouldn't be the person I was if I didn't have that. So I think becoming comfortable once you have resources and you have reached out to more people, then it stops weighing so heavy. It really is. And I am really good at being there for people, and I'm really shocking at telling anyone that I need anything, because I just feel like I can do it myself. I'm like, oh, everyone else is struggling, so like I can already do it, so why wouldn't I? And then I had my friends be like, I'm mad that you don't tell me that you're going through that. I want to help you. I'm like, why?
Yeah, there's always that, you know, you have that, you know, the idea creeping, you know, like, you know, they might probably be having their problems, you know, I shouldn't burden them with my stuff, you know, that kind of thing. And it kind of pushes me into like, you know, not talking about it, for example, you know, and like, I think it's good to know that no problem is too small or no problem is too big to talk to someone about.
Yeah.
You know, what might be difficult to you might be really easy to someone else. You know, they might have gone through it like heaps times, and they might have really good solution for you. So like, you know, I guess it's you know, if people are having problems, they should talk to somebody, and like, you know, maybe not wait for someone to you know, approach them and talk to them about it. Maybe try to come out and talk to other people.
I think that's the point though. Like, when you're in a low mood state, anything is too much. Like, if you're really down, it's hard to get out of bed. Your room's a mess. You probably didn't cook anything. You don't know when you had your last shower. Like, there's a whole lot of daily functions. So then to put the onus on someone to like, hey, when you're feeling really down, it's like if, you know, you've had a long training day and you're at the end of a session and someone goes, hey, do you mind spring cleaning the house? Like, no one feels like doing that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the same thing. So for most people, it's easier. And a lot of people, the first point of contact is they just tell their GP. And their GP. And there is counselling and services and stuff that can help people. That is the point of those systems. And obviously through lockdown, it's changed. This year has changed so much for people.
It definitely has. It's a really weird, I don't know how to explain.
It's a shift.
Yeah, it's a big shift. And like, you know, before going into the lockdown, you know, one of the things that was said, it's either going to bring a lot of people closer together or it's going to bring a lot of separation. And, you know, that was what was scary. Like, you know, because people were living very busy lives away, like from your partner or stuff like that. And then when you're put in a situation where you're being forced to stay in a space now, and you start to like learn a lot about the person that you might not take note of.
Even if the person is yourself, yeah.
Oh yeah, even if it, yeah, precisely. And like, it's scary, but I think we kind of needed it.
Yeah, and every experience you have is an opportunity to learn more about it. And I think the phrase that I use for physio is that you want to be anti-fragile. Like lots of people are like, you're resilient, and resilience implies that you're the same, you know, like something bad happened or something challenging happened and you came out of it the same. But anti-fragility is like something challenging happens and you become better for that thing. And that's, I guess, my philosophy for physio. I was like, maybe if you came with an ankle sprain and then we work on stuff, now you don't blow your ACL, like you're way better at changing direction, or your agility improves. Like you should become a better athlete and you should become a better human for going through this experience. And I think that's like the biggest kick I get out of doing what I do is trying to shift those things. But that's, I guess, when you were saying what's the worst part about physio, and the reason I said it was draining is because you learn those things about people, because I've got an hour.
Yeah, and it's like you're trying to squeeze all that into that time frame might not be the easiest thing to be doing. But I think we've gone for quite a while, maybe about an hour and a half now. That was a really good podcast. Would you like to add anything else? Any parting words, maybe?
No, I just think maybe the CKB backstory doesn't make a lot of sense if you don't know that what I am doing there. So I'm training at CKB, and I think especially as a female there, like everyone rates, you know, how the gym is itself and it has amazing coach and stuff, but it's also very intimidating. It's very intimidating, especially if you're female in that environment. And it's not to separate males and females, but essentially you are doing a combat sport. I mean, like today it's sparring. MMA is the only female. Like you do have to have, part of the reason like that you choose a goal is that you have to become something to be able to do it. So I don't like new situations very much. They scare the crap out of me. The first time I went to the gym, when you asked me about that, the first I went to one kickboxing class, and I went to the second one, and my best mate was early, and he's never early. And then I couldn't get out of the car, like, because he's like my safety person. Like, I feel okay if he's there. And I went for a run at Mount Wellington, and I didn't go back for 6 months.
Wow, really?
So you don't have to see everyone that's there, especially because the boys have such a high profile and they're great. You don't have to look at everyone and think, oh, they've always been really good. Like, it's okay if you struggle, you know, like, mate, wrestling warm-up, what even is that? It's so hard. If you're not an athlete, you can be intimidated by different things when you're going into a new situation. And I think Doug said this to me, you can go slow, but you can just never give up. And I'm very aware of, like, I'm very random and all over the place as a person, but I'll always persevere. It doesn't matter how long it takes me. Like, if I battle heaps at the start, there's no goal in my life, like we were talking about. I don't have a plan B. I'm like, if I set my mind to something, that's happening. So
all in. Yeah,
so MMA is the goal, and I'm in the very, very early baby stages of that. But I'm in the stages that I'm far enough past the initial, like, and I've had the same thing people say to me in the gym, like, I feel like I'm taking someone's time. Like, they don't want to come to training because they're like, you're not at the level as other people, so you feel bad for taking other people's time. You don't want someone to have to partner with you, like you were saying.
That's a terrible thing to say, like.
But it's true. Like, it is true. It is really intimidating when people are so great and you're not at that level. To see that it wouldn't be an inconvenience to have you there. And this is from people who are good. Yeah, and this is what I mean when people say, like, everyone wanders around and everything looks okay, and then if you actually ask them, how are you going? They didn't want to come to training today because everyone else at the moment's killing it and they're in fight camp and they don't feel that great.
But I guess, like, I mean, it has, you know, dawned upon me, like, you know, the fact that there's so many high-level people there. But that is also kind of one of the things that pushes me to go there.
Absolutely. You can see the gap between what they do and what you do, and you're like, that's why I'm not where they are.
Yeah, but, you know, in a way, I think, like, it pushes me because I want to learn, you know, like, to pick out stuff from all these different people. But yeah, at the same time, it's very not just like for a female, but for males as well who might not have as much experience and stuff like that. It is, you know, I'm sure it is intimidating. You know, I was intimidated at first, but like, I think like I kind of realized that, you know, it has happened to most probably all of them as well. At some stage,
Yeah.
you know, they probably were not the best, or, you know,
Correct.
obviously, you know, it comes with time, it comes with experience, it comes with a lot of hard work and a lot of pain. So, you know, I mean, yeah, that actually, you know, it says a lot. Like, it's not something that you think about, like you want to think
really,
about,
no.
but at the back of your mind, it's there, you know,
Yeah.
and it's not as easy. Yeah, I think I had a conversation with someone before about this, about just before entering that space of training, if you were having like a bad day or things were not going very well in your life in a period of time, so it's good to talk to somebody and kind of share, you know, and let them know what's happening, and so they can kind of keep an eye on you while you're at that intense environment, or when you're like sparring or this, that, whatnot, and on your training. And, you know, if you're going too hard or too soft, maybe this person can kind of talk to you and say, hey, you know,
Yeah.
maybe you want to chill out a little bit and
Regulated.
yeah, you know, because yeah, I mean, it's really easy to have like a really, I mean, I would say I'm quite an emotional person. Like, I'm very,
We're opposite.
you know, and like sometimes certain things happen can affect me in a big way, and if you bring that kind of energy there, and suddenly you might have like taken a punch that, you know, hit a certain nerve or whatever,
Right.
and then you're like, oh, it's on now, you know, that kind of thing. Like, it,
I don't have that. Yeah, again,
you know,
different, different opinions.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, in the beginning, I was struggling with that. I was like, you know, and then after a while, you know, after about maybe a year of like, you know, doing it, I kind of realized that, okay, look, I've really got to try to learn how to push that all out, you know, when I go into that environment, and not let it affect my mood or the way that how I'm sparring or fighting or whatever. It's hard. It's really hard. It's not easy, but like, I think it takes a lot of practice. And then, I mean, I'm not perfect. Nobody is, but you know, you gotta. You gotta constantly work on it, and try to get better at it, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's the part that when you don't see. I mean, I remember people looking at like our sessions with Sun and like, do you guys ever train? Like, because we're like laughing and joking all of the rest of the time. And it's because your working sets are actually really short. And it's the same when you're at CKB and stuff is great. Like, everyone's having so much fun, especially when we get to play dodgeball and stuff at the end is great.
Yeah.
But, you know, like if you're following what you're passionate about and you love what you do and you go in there and you're happy, I mean, David Neither talks about the same, and he's, I'm really like fortunate to work with him as well. But it's just like having fun. Like, the best times that you had when you're in that like flow state is when you're having fun. So yeah, if you can get yourself into that mindset of like enjoying what you're doing, then all of that stuff kind of fades away, because you don't have to think, oh, I've reacted to that, I'm in a bad mood. But if you start having fun with it, and I always crack up like every time someone donks me and I'm like, oh, noted, like,
Yeah.
register that. But I don't mind, because that's what I signed up for. Otherwise I don't step in there.
Precisely. Awesome. I think we've pretty much come to an end to our podcast. We ended on a very good note. A lot of lessons that we've learned today, I think, and we shed some light on a lot of stuff. But yeah, thank you, Aroha, for your time today.
Thank you very much for
And
having me.
I wish you all the best in your career, as well as your combat sports journey, and MMA and all that. And yeah, that's it from us. I'll put the links up to your socials on there, so people who are watching can follow Aroha. And yeah, thank you.
Awesome. See
Sure.
ya.
Thank you for watching this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and I'll see you on the next one.